yes, we are in the middle of what I like to call the urban jungle. Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. Sheesh, look at my LA Sprint, man, that thing looks amazing. You guys gotta admit, it looks pretty good, right? Anyway, in today's video, I want to give you guys an update on my LA Sprint now that I've been able to ride it for a good 4 or 5 weeks straight. So far, I love it. I'll kind of go through the components, some of the things that I've changed on this bike since the last time you've seen it. But before I do, I want to briefly talk about my fitness and my training for this fall as well as in the winter. So as you guys know in my previous videos, I've talked about that I'm training for racing indoors on Zwift. That's one of my favorite times of the year because it's just such high intensity and it's a lot of fun to compete with people all around the world. However, some of you guys in the comments were a little bit concerned about my training regimen, saying, oh, I went to your Strava and I checked all your data and I noticed that you're not doing enough high intensity training. And I gotta say that you know that you've made it as a superstar on YouTube when you have what I like to call couch coaches. I'm about to start calling them cooch coaches when they start investigating and inspecting your Strava, telling you how you should or shouldn't train. So I just want to talk about my training really quickly. So basically what I've been doing is polarized training, which is basically I spend about 80% of my time at about zone 2, maybe high zone 2, and then I spend 20% of my time at my threshold or above. So basically the 80% at zone 2, I'm just doing long, steady endurance rides. And then for the 20%, it's basically, if I'm not doing intervals, I'm basically doing Zwift racing. The thing is, when it comes to the high intensity, you have to first start with a solid base. You can't just jump right into high intensity training because it's not going to be sustainable. So you have to have a really good base, and that's what I've been doing for these past 4 weeks. Another thing that we may not have considered with my training is that I already have a pretty good base. Now, I've been cycling now pretty consistently and seriously for about the last, 2 years or so. So my base is pretty good. But I do want to just make sure I am where I need to be, which is why I've been sort of focusing on the endurance rides. And now I've started to implement that 20%, which is that higher intensity. So I started again racing on Zwift. Right now I'm doing the B races. They're pretty hard, but my fitness is going to be pretty much where it needs to be, where it was last year. So I'm actually right on schedule. In fact, I'm ahead of schedule as far as what my training should be. So I'm not telling you guys what you should or shouldn't do. Yikes. It is so much traffic out here. So I'm not telling you guys what you should or shouldn't do as far as your training goes, but for myself and what works for me is 80-20 polarized training, 80% zone 2, and then 20% at threshold or above. So anyway, okay, now that I've talked about all that stuff, let's go ahead and talk about my bike. So my LA Sprint, we got size 56. This is a brand new 2022 LA Sprint, as you guys see in this crazy white cream color here. I finally changed into a 130 -12 S-Works stem. We have my 3D printed top cap. I won't talk about that. Prime bike components. We have the Supacaz Bartape. The main thing that I changed on this bike though is I originally was rocking the Elite Drive 45D wheels, and I've since switched them over to the Elite Drive 65D wheels because here in Chicago it is really flat, and it might as well put some Aero wheels on there. Yeah, they're maybe like 100 grams heavier, maybe 150 grams heavier, but all of that is negated by the fact that it is a lot more aerodynamic. Now, I've mentioned in previous videos on these wheels when I had them paired to my Velo Build 168 that they aren't the stiffest set of Aero wheels out on the market. They definitely aren't noodles, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying compared to Windspace Hyper wheels. And I think that because they are slightly more comfortable than the previous generation of the Windspace Hyper wheels, that these wheels make a lot of sense on the LA Sprint, because being that the LA Sprint is an aluminum frame with a carbon fork and a carbon seat post, having a little bit of extra comfort is not a bad thing. Next up, let's talk about my SRAM Force eTap. I love it. It's going to be very hard to go back to mechanical shifting group sets, and I know that I won't because I've already bought a secondary group set, a SRAM Rival eTap that I'm going to be using for my next bike of some sort. I don't know what frame I'm going to build. It is the middle of November, so there's really not a lot of rides left. Today it is like 65 degrees, which is crazy for the middle of November, but it's gonna be getting cold pretty soon. So there's really not a lot of outdoor riding going on, which is why I've been focusing my attention on Zwift. So far guys, I really love this bike. I think the $1 million question that you guys wanna know is, do I prefer this bike versus my Windspace T1500 Aero frame? It's pretty close, it's pretty close. I can't say which one I like more just yet. What I will say is obviously the Windspace Hyper is slightly lighter than this, but this just feels a little bit more planted. If I had a crit race to do tomorrow and I wasn't concerned about crashing or replacing components or anything like that, I would take my Windspace Hyper because I just love that bike. But if I was doing like a road race or something, like a long Fondo or something, I would probably take this because I have everything set up on this really comfortable to the point that you can't really tell that it's an aluminum bike. Oh, one other thing I'm gonna talk about really quickly here. I've mentioned it on my Instagram in the past. So this is what I use as far as nutrition on the bike. I'll take some fig bars, I might take some gels, but I don't really use them. Basically what I do is I'm basically just doing sugar water. So both these water bottles here, they're just sugar water in them with a splash of Gatorade just for taste. So if I'm doing like a 2-hour endurance ride like I am today, I'll put about 40 to 50 grams of sugar in each of these bottles, and that will be enough to get me through a 2-hour endurance ride. Now if I'm doing like an hour to an hour and a half of you know, at threshold or something like that, sweet spot, then I'll do about 60-65 grams of sugar in each of these bottles. And I'll also do a pinch of Himalayan or kosher pink salt just to add some taste in there, and then like I said, a splash of Gatorade. That's really all your body needs is, you know, when you're doing these higher effort rides and you're burning all your glucose, is that what it's called, glycogen? I don't know, whatever it's called, but you're basically just burning off sugar, and that's what you need to be replenished. So you don't have to spend all of this exorbitant amount of money on nutrition, when in reality all you just need is sugar, water, and a pinch of salt if you sweat a lot like I do. So that's gonna wrap up today's video, guys. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below. And I will check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.